Welcome to the Buddhism Guide podcast. I'm Yeshirabge, and this episode is called The Gentle Goodbye, a Buddhist guide to dying without fear. This podcast is free and independent due to member support, and a big thank you to everyone who's supporting this show. If you're interested in supporting my work, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Buddhism Guide. And if you'd like to see more of my content, please visit yeshirabge.com. In this episode, I'll be talking about a subject that most of us try to steer clear of, and that's death. But it's inevitable. How can we face death without the fear? So, let's get started. Death is a topic that many of us prefer to avoid, despite it being one of the few certainties in life. In this podcast, I aim to share my understanding of the Buddhist perspective on death and dying. While I recognize that we all have unique views on this subject, I hope you'll find some valuable insights and practices here. In the quiet moments that surround the experience of death and dying, whether it's the anticipation of our own end or the heart-wrenching process of supporting a loved one, we're confronted with life's most profound and universal truth. All things are impermanent. From a Buddhist perspective, this is not a cold philosophical statement, but a gentle, if sometimes difficult reminder of the very nature of existence. To handle death with compassion and wisdom is not to conquer it or to explain it away, but to learn how to meet it with an open heart. This path is not about adopting specific religious beliefs about afterlife, but rather about cultivating a way of being that can hold the reality of loss with grace, presence, and deep care. The foundation of this approach begins long before the final days. It's built upon the daily practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a practice of paying attention to the present moment. When we cultivate this skill in our daily lives, we truly taste our food, feel the sensation of our breath, or listening intently to a friend. We're training our minds to be with what is, rather than being swept away by our thoughts about what was or what might be. This training becomes invaluable when facing death. For the person who is dying, the mind can become a storm of fear, regret, and resistance. A mindful approach doesn't try to stop the storm, but instead learns to find a steady anchor within it. A practical way to do this is through the simple practice of breathing awareness. When fear arises, one can gently direct attention to the physical sensation of the inhalation and exhalation. It's not an avoidance of fear, but a way of grounding oneself in the anchor of the body, creating a small space between the person and the overwhelming emotion. It's in this space that a measure of peace can be found. For a caregiver, this same practice is essential. In the face of a loved one's pain or confusion, it's easy to become overwhelmed with our own grief and helplessness. By consciously returning to the breath for just a few moments, we can calm our own nervous system and return to the situation with greater presence and stability, better able to offer the comfort that only a calm presence can provide. Alongside mindfulness, the cultivation of compassion, both for oneself and for others, is the ointment that soothes the sharp edges of suffering. For the one dying, self-compassion is perhaps the most important work. There may be a tendency to criticize oneself for a life not fully lived, for past mistakes, or for becoming a burden. A compassionate response is to meet these thoughts with the same kindness one would offer to a frightened child. This can be practiced through gentle, internal language. Instead of following a thought like, "I'm so weak," you can learn to acknowledge it and respond with, "This is a moment of suffering. It's okay to be weak. May I be kind to myself in this pain." This is not self-pity, but a courageous acknowledgement of one's own humanity. For the caregiver, compassion is the force that allows them to stay present with suffering without being destroyed by it. It's important to remember that compassion includes the caregiver themselves. The commitment to self-care is not selfish. It's the very foundation of sustainable care for another. This means giving oneself permission to take breaks, to sleep, to cry, and to acknowledge one's own limits. A practical example is the compassionate pause. Before entering the room of the dying person, a caregiver can take a moment to place a hand on their own heart, feel their feet on the floor, and set a silent intention. May I offer comfort? May I be peaceful? May I be a peaceful presence? This simple ritual can transform the energy brought into the room. The Buddhist teaching of non-attachment is often misunderstood as a cold detachment or lack of love. In the context of dying, nothing could be further from the truth. Non-attachment is the wise understanding that clinging to what is inevitably changing causes the greatest suffering. It's the practice of loving fully and deeply without demanding that object of our love to remain permanent. This can be integrated into the dying process in very practical ways. For a family, it might involve creating space to share memories and express love, while simultaneously acknowledging the reality of the impending separation. This could look like sitting together and saying, "We love you so much, and we'll miss you terribly. It's okay for you to let go when you're ready." These words, though incredibly difficult to speak, can be a profound gift of release, freeing the dying person from the worry of the grief they are leaving behind. For the person dying, practicing non-attachment might involve a conscious process of letting go. This can be done literally and figuratively. They might go through photographs, not with regret, but with a sense of gratitude for the moments lived. They might give away cherished possessions to loved ones, not as a sad duty, but as the joyful passing on of energy and memory. Each act of release, no matter how small, is a rehearsal for the final letting go, and each one can bring a subtle lightening of the heart. The actual environment in which dying occurs can greatly support or hinder this inner work. Creating a sacred space, even in a secular sense, means intentionally shaping the physical and energetic environment to be conducive to peace. This does not require any religious icons. It means paying attention to the senses. Soft, natural light is often calming. Soothing instrumental music or the gentle sounds of nature can mask the clinical noise of medical equipment. The room can be kept clean and uncluttered, reducing sensory overload. The sense of touch is profoundly important. Holding a hand, a gentle foot massage, or simply soothing back hair are acts of communication that transcend words and offer deep comfort. Even the sense of smell can be engaged. A simple, natural scent like lavender or chamomile on a cloth can be so soothing. The key is to move from a mindset of simply providing medical care to one of holistic nurturing, attending to the spirit as well as the body. Finally, the practice of impermanence must extend to the grief of those who remain. Grief is not a problem to be solved, but a natural, wave-like process to be honored. A Buddhist approach to grief encourages mindful grieving. This means allowing the feelings of sadness, anger, and loneliness to arise without judgment, to be felt fully in the body, and to be witnessed with compassion. One might set aside a specific grieving time each day, such as 10 minutes to hold a photograph and simply feel whatever arises without distraction. When the time is up, one can gently return to the duties of the day, having given the grief its rightful space. This is far healthier than constantly suppressing the pain, which only causes it to leak out in other, more destructive ways. Ritual, too, can be a powerful container for grief. While traditional religious rituals may not resonate for everyone, secular ones can be just as meaningful. This could be planting a tree in the memory of the loved one, writing them a letter to express unsaid things, or gathering friends to share stories and celebrate their life on their birthday. These acts help to channel the chaotic energy of grief into a creative and honoring form, helping the bereaved to integrate the loss into the ongoing story of their lives. In the end, from this perspective, handling death and dying is the ultimate practice of being human. It calls upon us to be fully present, to love without possession, to meet suffering with compassion, and to acknowledge the fleeting, precious nature of every single moment. It's a path that doesn't offer easy answers or promises of a hereafter, but instead provides practical tools for navigating the most challenging terrain with dignity and heart. When we integrate mindfulness, compassion, and an understanding of impermanence into our everyday life, we cultivate the strength and openness required to approach death not as a defeat or misfortune, but as the final, natural stage of life, to be welcomed with the same courage, love, and grace that guides us through every other chapter of our lives. So, that's it for this episode. I hope you found it of some benefit. And don't forget to check out my website, yeshirabge.com, or follow me on Instagram at yeshi_rabge. So, until the next time, bye for now.